I am stuck at home with COVID, so watch me do my cast service, which today is going to be showing you people my 9 out of 10 talk exhibition. This is a case study, so I'm just going to be showing you why I got marked down, how I got 9 out of 10, so you can just basically see an example of a really good exhibition. Hopefully this will just, help you figure things out and maybe inspire you to write something similar. Now, this was the final exhibition, which means that this is the essay sent to the IB. I'm M22, so I'm the first year doing this assessment component. Mm, I will be including my teacher's remarks, which basically elaborate on why I got marked down and why I got a 9 out of 10, why this was a really good piece of work. Note that I will be referring to my teacher as examiner from now on. I'd like to remind you that this hit the highest score category, which is excellent. Um, and I'll attach the source of this rubric in the description, or you can pause it right now and read it. Now, before I get into this, I'll just tell you two tips, two things I found helpful while writing this. This isn't what my teacher told me, this is just what I found helpful during the process. So, first of all, the first thing I did is I chose my prompt, not the objects. Because it's always easier, honestly, to find a prompt that you're comfortable with, that you like, and then just find objects that fit it. Because really, I mean, there's a million objects that can go to every prompt. Also, while writing, I didn't really pay too much attention to word count. I wrote what I had to write, and then I made sure to, make it more concise, maybe cut some things out, just in general shorten it. Okay, let's get right into it with object one, which is Wikipedia. Now, the examiner said right off the bat regarding the object, the examiner said this object could have been more specific. So basically, I could have used a specific article from Wikipedia. However, this is still fine. It's still an object. It's like using a printed version of an encyclopedia. In the first paragraph, I write Wikipedia is an online encyclopedia created in 2001. It is freely accessible and hosts 55 million articles in 317 languages on nearly all conceptualized topics. It is one of the most visited places on the web, with 1.7 billion visitors each month. Now, this is a very concise specification of the object. I've separated this into a paragraph to make it clear for me and for the examiner that I'm fulfilling the criterion of specifying this object. Again, now this does not have to be long. This can be very short. Just make sure to basically just specify this object very clearly and very concisely. You do not have many words here, so use them wisely. Now, the citation style I used here, I've used two ones to refer to the same article, is kind of incorrect, could be improved. I should have used one and two. This isn't a huge fault, but do watch out. Next, I state my knowledge claim as a separate and concise part. Wikipedia's organization of knowledge in the form of an easily accessible global database enables users to know a great deal of knowledge in its full scope. This is basically the sentence which briefly and very generally explains what this object will introduce into this whole exhibition. Remember to support every single part of this sentence later in your body of this object. I then move on to explaining my knowledge claim. I write Wikipedia allows anyone to search for any topic. Then I write the articles contain instantly accessible pieces of facts, perspective, and reference. If it was not for Wikipedia, this process would require thousands of books, papers, and documents, which the user would have to manually search for and through. This process would be complicated, lengthy, and costly. It is also certain that not all people would be able to access certain elements of knowledge without Wikipedia for reasons of physical distance. I then justify this reason of physical distance by writing, for example, the original U.S. Declaration of Independence is on public display in Washington. However, many people cannot afford to travel there and read it. There's an issue with the way I wrote many people cannot afford to travel there and read it. Many people is vague support because it's not really referring to any specific group of people or a person that we may identify and use as an example. So the examiner said I should have written, for example, one specific person, for example, myself, or a group of people who cannot travel there. Just naming them would make this more specific. That would be enough. I move on to write, thanks to Wikipedia, we are able to access it from anywhere, thus greatly affecting the scope of what we know. Knowers can easily upload to Wikipedia, and this ensures we access knowledge in its full scope. A plethora of experts freely share what they know about specific topics. The articles on the website are written in great detail with numerous documents, photos, and facts. Now, here we have another problem. I wrote the articles on the website are written in great detail with numerous documents, photos, and facts. The examiner said that I could have used a specific article as an example to actually support this, because this doesn't really have any support. This is very vague, it's very general. I'm referring to all the articles on Wikipedia, and it would have been better to refer to one specific example. So again, this is vague support for my claim. I move on to write, this is because Wikipedia's knowledge organization system enables quick and easy sharing of information. Traditionally, specific knowledge would be organized analogously in dedicated societies or libraries at institutions such as Harvard University. I use an example here. I made it more specific. I put in real world context. That's good. These were accessible to few. This meant that limited amounts of knowledge were known to the general public. Thanks to Wikipedia, knowledge formerly locked away from most society can be shared worldwide for billions of people to know more. I then conclude this object by writing, this object demonstrates the importance of organizing knowledge in a form convenient to knowers and learners. Moreover, Wikipedia helps us understand how convenience can function as an essential element and incentive to acquiring detailed knowledge. This is basically, I've separated this to show the examiner that I can draw a clear and concise conclusion, where I basically summarize everything that I wrote in the body. Okay, let's move on to object 2, which is an opening statement from an episode of Justice with Judge Jeannie from March 7th, 2020. Here's a screenshot and the source. Now, again, I have this really short paragraph which very concisely specifies the object. This is the opening statement to an episode of Justice with Judge Jeannie, a Fox News Channel show. This specific episode was aired on March 7th, 2020, and hosted by Janine Pirro, who is a conservative television personality. In this segment, she mainly discusses COVID-19 risks. Again, I'm very clearly specifying what this episode is about, who is hosting it, what it is in general. Then, again, I state my knowledge claim. This object shows how selective organization of knowledge for the sake of convenience may result in bias and thus limit what we know. Again, this is very concise and it's going to be supported later in the body. In the body, I write, the opening statement is under 10 minutes long in order for it to be enjoyable to the viewer and for knowledge to be conveniently consumed. Therefore, shortcuts and abbreviations had to be used to keep the episode concise. As a result, multiple facts and perspectives are left out. In the clip, Pirro selects specific elements of knowledge to support only certain claims, thus possibly validating a certain worldview, which, according to critics such as Sonia Saraya, is biased towards conservatism. I basically stated that her claims might support a certain worldview, and that's biased. And then I'm going to support it in the rest of the body. For example, the material claims that we are at record highs and justifies it with knowledge from the US BLS statistics, such as 273,000 jobs added. However, when the host claims that all the talk about coronavirus being so much more deadly doesn't reflect reality, there is an attempt to substantiate this with a claim regarding the 16,000 Americans who died from influenza in 2019, despite a vaccine being available. No relevant statistical knowledge is presented to truly back this claim. Meanwhile, it was also already known in February that the COVID 19 mortality rate was 2.5% compared to 0.1% to 0.18% for influenza in the US, as reported by the New York Times. Don't be afraid to use underlining to make it clear to yourself and to the examiner that you're putting more emphasis on one specific element of your sentence. I then follow up with this sentence. The viewers of such biased material might not see the full scope of the issue, as only one side of the debate is backed by facts. Now, there was an issue with this sentence. I wrote, might not see the full scope of the issue. And the examiner told me that this is basically very hypothetical support for my claim. And it might have been more useful to actually say who was actually affected by this biased claim, who was actually affected by this material. Stating this would have created a good and effective support to my point. I then move on to, again, quickly just summarize the body of this paragraph. This object suggests that there may be a cost in the form of objectivity to conveniently organize knowledge. It also demonstrates the importance of selective knowledge organization to shaping our worldview. Again, very concise, just summarizes and draws some conclusions out of what I wrote in my body paragraph. Okay, moving on to our last object, which is a CIA information report from August 10th, 1955 on an alleged new type of Soviet submarine. I used a information report available as a PDF from the CIA FIA reading room. This is a very reliable source. They have a ton of such documents. So if you're going to be using something similar, I highly recommend it. Moving on to what I wrote in the introduction. This is a CIA report regarding the obtaining of information about an alleged new submarine type built by the USSR. It is from August 10th, 1955, contains information gathered in late spring of 1955, and was partially declassified in 2017. The purpose of this document was to inform the U.S. government of Soviet military progress, which at the time was considered a national security threat. This object shows how certain methods of classifying knowledge are meant solely to conceal it from other individuals. Again, I very concisely, very briefly stated what this object is, when it's from, what it's about, and then stated my unique knowledge claim, basically what this object introduces into the exhibition. Then I write, the classification of this knowledge was secret, so harmful to national security if released. This meant that few authorized individuals could access it. The classification of this knowledge severely affected what was known by most people, because the distribution of it was illegal, as seen on top of the file. The report card contains results of espionage, which were especially controversial in 1955 due to mounting USSR-USA tensions. In the USSR, spies were imprisoned and convicted if found. For example, Gary Powers, who crash landed in the Ural during a stealth mission, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Therefore, the report was also classified as secret to protect the identity of the reliable source, who would have been arrested or executed for high treason if discovered. Notice how I'm using this real-life example of Gary Powers to support my claim about protecting the reliable source. In my conclusion, I state parts of the document are still redacted. We do not know the reason for this, but it means that the report's classification still affects what we, the public, know. This object shows us how it is possible to severely restrict what we know through classification of knowledge. It also helps us understand in what way this kind of classification is often essential to national security and stable international relations. I'm drawing a longer and broader conclusion in this object. However, this is totally correct, and the examiner really liked this. There are actually no objections to object 3. This was basically a perfect object. It was nicely specified. The real world context was there and was appropriate. Um, the link to my knowledge claim was clear and well explained. And additionally, secrecy as a way of organizing knowledge was shown in action, so basically relating to non hypothetical knowers in real world situations. I hope this helped you. I have to note at the end that this has been internally assessed so far, so basically the IB has not moderated this exhibition yet. However, I'm really confident that this will not get marked down. It's really rare that my school gets any of its works marked down by the IB. As soon as I do get my moderated score in May 2022, I will post it in the description. I'll also try to post a PDF of this exhibition so you can download it and have it for yourself. I'll be posting more internal assessment breakdowns on this channel, so feel free to subscribe, and I will do my best to respond to your comments if you have any.